Peter was trying to be helpful. He heard some words of Jesus and he could not make sense of them. Has that ever happened to you? In a relationship with a friend, or a partner, or a lover, or a spouse? But it really rubs Jesus the wrong way, what Peter says. And he uses some language that is, to our ears, surprising. Calling Peter Satan. When Peter was admonishing Jesus for not caring enough about self-preservation. He didn't want to hear that the road ahead would be difficult and would lead ultimately to a cross. No, self-preservation above all. Take care of yourself first. When Jesus hears these words from his friend, he rebukes him, calling him Satan. Now we need to be careful with this term Satan. He's not saying that Peter is evil. Satan in the original Greek was a term that was very common in the legal court system. It referred to the prosecuting attorney. The prosecuting attorney's job is to prove the person on trial is wrong. Peter was putting Jesus on trial and accusing him of being wrong about self-preservation. Jesus responds by saying, "Get thee behind me." What's important in this story for us is that Peter easily, no matter how long he walked with Jesus, how many years he knew Jesus, he very easily slipped in to the conventional wisdom that looking out for one's own self is the true path to success. Put oneself above all others. To thine own self be true. The road to success, the road to fullness of life. But wisdom in the gospel is rarely conventional. And Jesus stands that wisdom on its head when he says, "For those who want to save their life will lose it. And those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it." It's a paradox, isn't it? When we look only to ourselves, we would think that we would find happiness. We would think we would discover the meaning of life. But the truth is, tending only to one's own interests leaves us very impoverished. Because neither you nor I are the center of the universe. Have you ever watched a little baby? A newborn? Have you noticed that for the newborn infant, the whole world revolves around me? I'm hungry. I'm thirsty. I'm wet. I don't like this. Change me. Feed me. Me. And you exist as a person in order to meet the needs of the baby, right? That's your purpose in life, to feed, clothe, take care of the baby. The baby knows only the self, only the basic needs. Baby is born with two basic instincts, to grasp and to suck. And to pretend that the universe revolves around me. Now most of us grow out of that, but some don't. Sooner or later, Physicists, astronomers tell us that the universe has no physical center. I'm intrigued by that. If you're looking out in space, in the vastness of space, astronomers, physicists tell us there is no real center because the universe is curved. The curvature of physical space means that the only possible center is therefore spiritual. We Christians call that the cosmic Christ. We need to take another look during Lent at our priorities and see ourselves not as the center of the universe, but as a beautiful piece of the whole mosaic. And so this Lent, more than giving up candy or cake or the Dallas Cowboys, maybe what we should be doing is denying our false position in the scheme of things. For a start, this week we might resolve to do something for someone else, for someone other than ourselves, with no reward in mind. There may be someone lonely, someone who is hurting out there. There may be someone that only you can reach with a good word or with a healing touch. Repositioning ourselves in relation to the center. You might say that that is the purpose of Lent, to reorient our thinking. And then this amazing story of Abraham and Sarah. The first 11 chapters of the Bible in the book of Genesis are called the primeval saga, the story of the human family in its infancy, its earliest age. But the real story begins with the family, Abraham and Sarah. Most scholars think that this story was written in a very difficult time for the nation of Israel, when it was carried off into captivity into Babylon. All of its bright leaders, its young talent, all of them carried off. The city of Jerusalem laid waste. The people carried off far, far away to the city of Babylon, present-day Iraq. The flower of their society, their leadership, carted away, the people wondering what would happen. And so what did they do? They wrote down this story. It's a story of origins. Does it help you sometimes to reorient your thinking when you remember how far you've come? Does it help you sometimes to remember who your people are? There's a wonderful scene in the movie Amistad where one of the African leaders, on the day before the big decision of the Supreme Court, whether or not these Africans would be allowed to return home, whether they would be granted their freedom. There's a wonderful scene in that movie where one of the characters reminds the African leader that during times of great trial and tribulation, it is appropriate to call upon your ancestors. And your ancestors are required to show up and to help you. When they were in exile, the Israelites remembered their ancestors. They remembered the story of Abraham and Sarah. And it's so wonderful that the story is just such an ordinary story of a human family. And it's also somewhat comical. I really appreciate Chuck reading this story. He's been wanting to read, but he hasn't been able to be in church for a couple of weeks. And he read the story beautifully. The only thing that was missing was the laughter. At 99, at 100 years old, they were going to start a family. Abraham and Sarah. The originating promise of the Bible is that somehow from this first couple there would come a family, and from that family everyone, every person, every nation on earth would be blessed. God is the one who is at work in this story, trying to shape a family. It starts with a man and a woman who are willing to leave their home and everything that they had and the whole life that they enjoyed and to go to a place. And so they set out not knowing where they were going. I love this story because it's so peculiar. And it reminds me a lot of church. Friends, sometimes we may be overwhelmed by the challenges that we face. Whether they be budgetary, or challenges of leadership, or challenges of the nursery school, or how about challenges of this building, keeping it up? There may be times when we feel overwhelmed and lost, not knowing who we are or where we're going. In those times, it is appropriate to remember that God has a plan. And that plan does not depend entirely upon us. Otherwise, we would be certain to fail. We are not the center of the story. The church is the only institution in the world that exists for the benefit of other people. We must remind ourselves of our high calling. And remember that God has been with us through other difficult times. And we have come through. We have known many storms in life. Our boat may have been swamped, but we have come through. We may have been lost on the journey a time or two. We may have been afraid, but we have come through the other side. And we're still here. And we're not turning back. We're not going back. We're not going back. We are not going back. We're going forward. Even though, at times, we may not know where we're going, we know who's going with us. And that makes all the difference. In your bulletin, there's this wonderful song. It comes out of the African American hymnal. We've come this far by faith. My voice is shot, but I'm going to sing it for you anyway because I love this song. Maybe you'll join in a second time. We've come this far by faith, leaning on the Lord, trusting in His holy word. He's never failed us yet. And my favorite part, we won't turn back. We've come this far by faith. Let's try it together. Oh, we've come this far by faith, leaning on the Lord, trusting in His holy word. He's never failed us yet. Oh, we won't turn back. Hallelujah.